My real concern, and the concern of most of us who are in this industry, is in the area of decision-making. The kinds of roles that could be done, the kinds of projects that should be mounted, and the money to do that.
I've seen the representation of black people on all the series television as diminishing over the past 3 years. It's just gone from a few people to not too many, except for the comedies. And, well, they need a lot of work.
You have to give people the opportunity first of seeing themselves. They're just so starved they'll look at anything. Then after this, they will start to choose.
I'm Tony Brown. In a moment, it's what you look like that counts.
Ziggy, 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 ziggy. Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yo, I walk through brick walls, fuck around, hijack your whole shopping mall. I be ripping shit, that's my word bond. Scream, then I watch the whole planet Earth respond. Do just what you're told, the remote control. Crash course your shit, you know how we roll. When I tumble and drive, then you reply, my. Yo, I execute all plans. When up in two bitches for me and my mans. Hot, breaking full, hot for my fans. In return, niggas give me the hot sound scans. Hot strike matches, golden egg hatches. Request line is open, send all your faxes. Reach the flows with no rehearsing. Roller skate backwards when the beats start reversing. You're so whack, you make people start cursing. Flows contradict worse than the King James Version. Turn on your mic, but your shit will stop working. Beats rooted eyes, your whole rhyme, your head hurting. Broomsticks and witches, from rags to riches. We get mad love with y'all niggas to burn britches. Amateur, why won't you look right at the calendar? A matter of time before I start to damage her. So starving to just bust my rhyme caliber. Consecutive wounds like a nigga stabbing ya. Yo, my whole team get wild cream. Politicking every move to the extreme. So hardcore like Quick Draw McGraw. Fuck what you heard, you ain't heard this before. So hardcore like Quick Draw McGraw. Fuck what you heard, you ain't heard this before. Hardcore like Quick Draw McGraw. Fuck what you heard, you ain't heard this before. So hardcore like Quick Draw McGraw. Fuck what you heard, you ain't heard this before. Yo, I come right through the door. With rhymes galore, bust the rhymes, the ambassador. Explore my metaphor, you beg for more. Hardcore shit, we are surely insecure. I said my whole squad of niggas come through and break the law. My family tight more than Connect Four. I come through and create the masterpieces. Bend your mind with rhyme telekinesis. Yo, I will break shit down. Lost the fair flow will blast like a 4 pound. Right before I hit you off with my vaccine. Starch, carbohydrates, lots of protein. Maxine, baby girl, yo, I hope your ass clean. Magazine front and fly lips is lime green. Yo, every time, yo, I'm on the scene. I beam the lights and watch who will reign supreme. Yes, you know when I keep it coming. Blow the fort, make you resort to handcuffing. Bounce on the beat and watch how a nigga work it. Fuck round, making your speaker short circuit. This heavyweight tip the scale on the triple beam. Bust the rhyme blast and still bang the mainstream. Wow, I had to make you all mad. Hit you off, get the loot, bounce the Trinidad. Now I see you, bitch. Nigga sounding so soft, make a nigga cough quick and then turn your ass off. Extra raw, lay on your back, get on the floor, bust the rhyme. Got the headline, the whole tour. Cause we so hardcore like Quick Draw McGraw. Fuck what you heard, you ain't heard this before. So hardcore like Quick Draw McGraw. Fuck what you heard, you ain't heard this before. Hardcore like Quick Draw McGraw. Fuck what you heard, you ain't heard this before. So hardcore like Quick Draw McGraw. Fuck what you heard, you ain't heard this before. Yo.
Television is a dominant force in American life. It can achieve equivalent standards of presentation when grappling with cultural and racial diversity or when covering men and women. Because of the medium's capacity for fixing an image in the public mind, its responsibility for avoiding stereotypic and demeaning depictions becomes central to its role. That quote was taken from the preface of a report put out by the United States Commission on Civil Rights entitled Window Dressing on the Set, an Update, which is a follow-up to a report issued by the Commission a year ago that, quote, presented an historical review of major themes associated with the portrayal of minorities and women since television's beginnings, end of quote. The criticisms continue, the report goes on, but never have they been so consistently negative to any other minority as they have been to the portrayal of blacks. The report goes on to say, quote, the major criticism of situation comedies featuring blacks has been that blacks are almost always portrayed as being ridiculous and are almost never featured in a serious role. A retort to that has been used so often it has become obvious. So what? Whites also appear in ridiculous roles on television, they say. The response is that they appear in a wide variety of other programs as strong, positive characters, whereas blacks, with a very few exceptions, only appear in situation comedies. This actor is a long-standing observer of the movie industry. He is concerned about the future of blacks in television and film. Brock Peters.
I think that the footing we thought we'd gained in the past decade isn't as substantial as we'd hoped it would be. I was always fearful of that because it's one thing to have lots of roles handed out to actors in front of the camera. But my real concern, and the concern of most of us who are in this industry, is in the area of decision-making. The kinds of roles that could be done, the kinds of projects that should be mounted, and the money to do that. We've not ever been in that position in any substantial degree. And so I'm not surprised that with backlash and changing sentiments, that we have to fight harder now to maintain whatever ground we've gained. And it's not easy because we did not get a good solid footing. In front of the camera isn't finally where it's at. It's what that subject's going to be and who decides that it should be done.
What do you see as the new wave? Is the roots genre here? Are we going to recycle back to what was called blaxploitation? Being an observer of long-standing in Hollywood, what do you see?
Well, being an observer of long-standing of life or of Hollywood or whatever, I hesitate to predict. I would like to think that we'll see some positive things happening, but there already is change for us, and it's negative. We are terribly concerned not only about the kinds of things that are projected about us and our lifestyle, but the fact that even these are disappearing from home screens. We've got lots of these visitors today.
Yes.
Disappearing from home screens. And in any case, we're also concerned about the kinds of positive images that we've not really had, except once in a rare while.
After Roots, he may be known to you as Tom Murray, Alex Haley's great-grandfather. He is George Sanford Brown, one of the few black directors in television. He formerly starred on The Rookies. What do you see in your crystal ball in terms of future material for blacks? Is Roots going to bring us into a more dignified presentation of ourselves in TV and film?
I don't know, Johnny. It's this way. The first part of Roots was the highest-rated show in television history. It featured some of the best talent around in the entertainment industry, in actors and technicians. And after that, one would think, seeing that it made a great deal of money for the advertisers, I would suspect, that there would be a lot more of that programming around. And between the last Roots and this Roots, there just hasn't been that much. So when you say, what is this going to do for me or for the rest of the people in Roots, I really don't know. Because I don't think that the networks have been ready to do anything past Roots. I understand that they do have things in development now, but it remains to be seen exactly how far they take it.
Is there a possibility that this will be an ongoing series?
I don't see how, seeing that it is actual and factual, and it does cover a specific family and their history, and it goes all the way up to present, and I don't see where you can tag on anything to that. But I don't know. The networks have ways of doing all kinds of things.
I mean, you know, like a Black Waltons. It seems like it would lend itself to that.
I don't know about Roots, but I'm sure that there could be so many other stories and that could be done. Family could certainly be about a Black family.
Well, if the networks made so much money with Roots, obviously the formula works.
Yes.
Well, why wouldn't somebody make a series out of it?
I don't know. I have no answer. Because I've seen the representation of Black people on all the series television as diminishing over the past 3 years. It's just gone from a few people to not too many, except for the comedies. And, well, they need a lot of work.
The report cited an essay in Time magazine entitled Blacks on TV, A Disturbing Image, where Frank Rich defines the characters in black situation comedies with razor-sharp sensitivity. Quote, George Jefferson, entrepreneur, black bigot, a splenetic little whip of a man who bullies like a demented overseer, seldom speaks below a shriek, and worships at the church of ostentation. J.J. on television's Good Times, a bug-eyed young comic of the ghetto with spasms of supercool blowing through his nervous system, a kind of electroglide strut. And lastly, Ray Ellis in Baby I'm Back, a feckless black creep who deserted his wife and 2 children 7 years ago, one step ahead of his bookies and forcers, and has now reappeared to make excuses and bedroom eyes at his wife. In a research agenda prepared by Byron Reeves and Guy Lametti of the University of Wisconsin and West Virginia University, the commission tells of a study that asked a group of white children to give their opinions of the personality traits of some of the television characters. The sample included 15 well-known personalities, of which 5 were white females and 6 were white males. The results of the study suggested that the children attributed negative traits to several minority characters in the sample. J.J. of Good Times, Fred Sanford of Sanford and Son, and Chico of Chico and the Man. The only white character that the children thought was not smart was Archie Bunker, of All in the Family. The authors concluded by saying that the children associated humor with lack of smartness, and they really see the characters as buffoons. That is, the children viewed these characters as objects of ridicule. The government report says, quote, the viewer's ambivalence about situation comedies featuring blacks reflects the effect on black viewers of the portrayal of blacks in a ridiculous manner. It hurts, but it is preferable to exclusion. The ambivalence felt is best summed up by this comment offered as typical of the responses. Watching Fred Sanford is better than not getting to watch any black folks at all on television, but there should be more good programs on about us. Writer, producer, director, and actor Melvin Van Peebles can be considered as an expert on the media. He started a new trend in the 70s with his film Sweet Sweetback. What impact do you believe that images have in movies and film and on stage of black people on the impression on the personalities of black people, particularly young black people?
I think it's very important, but I think the most important part of it is people are very concerned with the positive, negatives, and so forth. It would be wonderful, perhaps, if they were all positive. I question this because then they have no rapport with what they see out in the street. What I think is important is for people to be able to see themselves. And then they will start choosing. Then they will, if you notice, there's been a turn from, the cinema has turned, the other things have turned. But you have to give people the opportunity first of seeing themselves. They're just so starved they will look at anything. Then after this, they will start to choose. A starving man will eat anything. After he gets his stomach a little fuller, he will start choosing things that are more to his liking, that are more to his benefit. But first we got to feed him. And often the blacks fall into the trap of the liberals saying to them, but you must do all of this. It took them that evolution. For example, talk of the Jewish theater, the evolution from 2nd Avenue, where they used to do what amounted to vaudeville or burlesque or these very heavy sentimental shows, and that took a long time to the little old ladies in blue hair now who frequent Fiddler and so forth and understand the differences of the light and so forth and so on. And you cannot make the historical leap that deep. Some of the shows that were on Broadway were, of course, shows which weren't really shows and still aren't really shows and so forth. But that takes time. That takes time. In the meantime, back at the ranch, people are learning their technique. People often ask me, what did I want to do in cinema? What did I want to do in theater? What do I think? Man, brothers and sisters are working, who never had an opportunity to work, who never had an opportunity to learn. Some of those people are going to waste their time. Some of them are going to be so fantastic, but they can't be that fantastic if they don't have a shot.
Now, your career is now not just an actor, although you are still a very fine actor. You're now doing a lot of directing. What about that phase of you?
It started while I was doing a television show called The Rookies, and because I was there every day for 4 years, I had the opportunity to learn a great deal and to watch what was going on. My executive producer at the time, Aaron Spelling, suggested to me that I direct, and a year later I started doing that. It's more or less grown out of what I was doing, and that was just acting. It's an extension of the acting. I think it's become more than that. It's now almost another craft for me. It's another world. It's something that I never dreamt of, and it's taken me to a place where it's forced me to investigate film a lot more. It's an added dimension for me.
What about a black that's operating in another phase of the majors in the industry, the directing aspect? What are the difficulties there? What are you overcoming?
There are not too many of us around. I think right here in Los Angeles, working probably 5 black directors that work regularly. I think the next problem is the material, first of all. The material does not deal with, it's very hard to relate to. It has nothing to do with black people or third world people, and I think that's the primary problem for us as directors.
.94% of a survey of 100 black leaders feel that black family life is harmed by black situation comedies. Only 6% feel that these programs help. 48% rate the current black situation comedies on television as bad, 39% mediocre, and only 13% rate them as good. What were the respondents' favorite black situation comedies? The Jeffersons led with 42%. What's Happening followed with 6%. Good Times came in last with only 1%. However, a majority of 51% say they have none. Which black situation comedies did they like the least? Good Times was the most disliked with 53%, and the Jeffersons with 13%. What's Happening and Different Strokes were disliked by only 2%. 11% don't like any black situation comedy. 59% of those responding say the characters on current situation comedies are like the Amos and Andy stereotypes. 41% disagree.
Do you believe that the images portrayed in the Two Roots parts are basically positive?
Oh, yes. I think that there can be no question about the strength of a living family and their aspirations. It's a full cycle in terms of the positives and the negatives of a human being's life.
James Earl Jones has played a variety of characters during his years on the stage and screen. He says one important aspect of the Roots sequel, in which he plays Alex Haley, is the honest portrayal of Malcolm X.
The one thing that it will do, this segment, is present a character that I think has been neglected by the media, by the arts, and that is Malcolm X. I've been involved with some attempts to present him. the greatest. He was presented in King. I don't think any of these attempts really present the Malcolm that should be known. And I guess it's only right that we should see Malcolm through Alex's eyes, the Malcolm that Alex knew, and because he is in a way the authority, being the author of the autobiography of Malcolm X. So that excites me more than anything else.
Dr. John Howard and a research team conducted a nationwide survey on the effects of the television series Roots.
Films, I think, both reflect the state of race relations at a given time, and also they help reinforce the state of race relations. If you look at the history of blacks in American films, it goes through very, very definite stages. If you begin with Birth of a Nation, the classic D.W. Griffith movie, which was released in 1915, blacks in that film were portrayed either as brutes or as toms, buffoons, clown-like figures. Curiously, blacks weren't even hired to play those roles. White actors in blackface played the black roles in Birth of a Nation. The position of blacks in the developing Hollywood film industry at that time being so marginal that one was not even hired then to play a denigrating role. Then what you might call progress took place. Still, the portrayals of blacks were very much denigrating, the shuffling, darky type figure, the dim-witted coon, figures of that sort, figures of fun and ridicule. And you got a whole host of black actors from about 1920 through the end of World War II, Manton Moreland, Hattie McDaniel, so on and so forth, whose only opportunity on the screen really was to play, to assume roles of that sort. Those were the only chances that they had to appear in films. But that was the mode, and it pretty much, I think, reflected the nature of race relations, the nature of white thinking at that time, certain dimensions of racism of that time. That the only popular public image of blacks that could be conveyed in films was black really as a sort of a clown-like figure, as a sort of a semi-human, dim-witted kind of figure. With one exception, the exception being Paul Robeson in films like The Emperor Jones, but those were not major Hollywood productions, and as a matter of fact, Robeson made many of his films in England. After World War II, and partly I think in terms of international reaction to the horrors of Nazi racism, you got a period in American films of liberalism. And Sidney Poitier became popular at that time, particularly in a film called No Way Out. And from about the end of World War to through the late 60s, the major image conveyed by Hollywood of blacks was the black as really as a noble victim, as a decent, humane, intelligent kind of chap, but who was put upon by bad whites. And a good white, Charlton Heston or Gregory Peck or somebody of that sort, if one, say, takes to Kill a Mockingbird as the archetypical film of that period, the good white, Gregory Peck, intervenes, defeats the bad whites, and saves this noble black victim. In the late 60s, one began to get a change, particularly in terms of the black exploitation movies and the rise of the Superfly image. Roots is interesting in that it's the first film that I know of, a very popular film. I guess the first one is very, very popular, that shows blacks really as masters of their own fate, even while under slavery, if you take the Kinte figure. Masters of their own fate with dignity, intelligence, sense of family, sense of strength, sense of pride. People who handle themselves, who develop themselves, who, as I say, master their own fate, who are not victims, who are not noble victims, who aren't clowns. And I think it was in that sense that simply as a Hollywood effort, it was very, very interesting, because it showed that one could produce a film with a very different image of blacks, and that film could be very popular, not only with blacks, but also with whites.
If you can't tell the difference between the old Steppenfetchie character of the Amos and Andy genre and J.J. on Good Times, it's because there is none. There is a substantial difference, however. Steppenfetchie in his time had no choice but to be a buffoon. Norman Lear is the white producer who gets most of the heat from critics of Good Times and the Jeffersons because he makes the money from them. Lear stated some excellent intentions on a panel in Los Angeles that I moderated for the National Urban League. Let's laugh at ourselves while we create jobs for good black actors. But the characters these actors portray are out of the workshop and social conscience of Norman Lear. You might say that much of what you see on television called black shows is actually his perception of black life and lifestyles, or Norman Lear's black alter egos. In case you don't understand all of the furor over what you may consider a trivial matter, ask yourself, would you want your daughter to marry a JJ? Would you want a black bigot like George Jefferson for a neighbor? I wouldn't.
Rhyme is faster than the speed in the bullet. Has more rhymes than any other crew that has tracks. Able to leap sucker MCs in a single bound. Look at the jam of the mic. It's the L, the O, the N.
3 initials blows it up like me. Besides TNTC and NNBT, my visionary was given on my DOB. I guess it was a SOS from G.O.D. Chaos is arisen into telespace zone. Cellular contributes like keypads with all base. Third planet states while the rest of the world waits. Joy to the world, meaning hell, snow, and earthquakes. Participates, modulates. If comments were round plates, written names and dates. For only those involved relates, case after case. Zinkos on the next space, moving strategically in the solar system's waist. Size 25, the limbs still be in place. Stretched and extending, reflexes as attending. It's not mind-bending nor offending to keep remembering. Cause everybody's even gonna doubt or believe. We dispense necessity to shout and receive.
Keep it moving along.
People in the party, are you really feeling me? We ain't seeing eye to eye, so you ain't really seeing me. I be hearing all type of niggas saying, fuck that nigga flow. When they see me in the party, they better act like they know. Yo, we connect the dots that make spots hot. Until the beat job, or you don't stop. Notice how many groups can formulate then lose focus. With a lot of hocus pocus concepts that sound bogus. I'm seeing the world in all its different kind of poses. Rush you like roaches, that's keeping the crowd moving. Mr. and the dancers, roots and culture consuming. Never fake, seekers, setting straight. Cause I contaminate like a dirty hypodermic needle. My vision's clearer than the sights on an eagle. Scalp the mother eye, bring the head back to my table. Don't run, circle, circle, dot, dot, you catch a speed now. Feel that, cause this type of vibe sounds dumb. Far from the do run, to the do run. Yes, yes, to the beat poison your ass excessive. Exclusive LONS bringing the ruckus wild aggressive.
Keep it moving along, keep it moving along, keep it moving. Keep it moving, keep it moving, keep it moving, keep it moving along, keep it moving along.
Now don't get me wrong, chill.
Hear me out, no question, no doubt. Your joy is a drought. I've come to wet the party like a tropical depression. Mental aggression for this musical session. Stressing, testing, second guessing who's fessing. Life is a lesson in disguise like a blessing. Blinking, kicking, better backed up chickens, sticking stunts, but I keep it real front wire. Cause on my dick like hands called pubic. Measurements, square feet and cubic. We're all making pennies off a record, so who makes the paper? The man in Manhattan lamping in the skyscraper. How much can a nigga take before he break full? I play it cool with the new school and the tool to examine my unorthodox pattern. From Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. And don't forget Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Flow deeper than the lava inside a volcano, bro.
Never say
never demonic. Fucking up my economics, is it rather ironic? Sipping gin, juice, and tonic like Sean Kemp with some hip super sound and sonic. Baby, above your head, below your feet, and it still went. See Boogie Brown, my shit is brilliant.
Yo, my shit be so gigantic, and I'ma take 2 steps and cross the whole Titanic. Better believe I keep moving, people change. You know my crew for bringing it full-fledged, bringing it back like I'm fresh out the box. Pair of Pro-Kid 69ers. Up in the house, so open up your blinders. Yo, I be the Moses taking poses with the rhyme flow so beautiful like a large bouquet of roses.
Keep it moving along, keep it moving along, keep it moving.
It is it, man. Keep it moving now. No need to try to stop it, we gon' wreck shit anyhow. Yo, limitations is something I never will allow. When we bake the cake, I'll be that nigga that brings the icings. Disregard your whole identity and revoke your driver's license. You know I'm blasting your ass real fast. Got your bladder burning, desperate for a bathroom pass. Monumental like a Busta Rhymes statue made of brass. Hypnotize the mass. Shit's so hot, better jump in the water, nigga. Breaking fooling parties like a fucking sound class. Split the Philly down the back and mix the weed with more hash. I will wash away your pain like Drano, erupting like the angriest volcano or the wickedest whirlwind and tornado. We stay up in the streets cruising, me and my whole crew gotta
keep it moving along, keep it moving, get busy, keep it moving, leaders of the leaders, stay together, keep it moving along, keep it moving along, keep it moving. Get your money, nigga. Flip mode squad, keep it moving, guys. Word is bomb. Keep it moving along, keep it moving along, keep it moving. Stay together, guys. Word is bomb. Keep it moving, keep it moving along, keep it moving along, keep it moving.
This one goes out to the three brothers that I love the most and lost in the making of this song. My man Ratto.
It has been holding the Black Image in Motion Pictures and Television seminars since 1978 to remedy this problem.
It is undeniable that Black Americans are becoming increasingly more concerned about the images that are projected about Black people in the movies and on television. It is also undeniable that Black people are becoming increasingly concerned about the employment of Blacks in that industry, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. And so we believe that it is a legitimate issue for us to be concerned about, A, in terms of how Black people are projected and what that means in terms of telling the Black experience in this nation. And secondly, where Black people fit into that whole industry of profiting from participating in that, particularly since we happen to believe that the true image of Blacks can only truly be told when Blacks have a role in defining what that is.
Sad distortions of the Black experience are pushed in situation comedies by the networks because they sell. And what's at stake? Bucks. Big bucks. Each Nielsen point represents 1% of the number of U.S. households equipped with TV sets, currently numbered at 80 million homes. A single newscast rating point is now worth up to $7 million a year in advertising revenue. In 1970, the three networks lost a total of $20 million on their news operations. By 1979, the three news divisions earned an estimated $50 million in profits, and profits continue to rise. Viewers are now being hit by a tidal wave of news, and at stake are millions of dollars in revenue, prestige, and influence. The way television news is developing, it may well emerge as the network's primary product.
Now, one of the interesting things is that following World War II, when the racist imagery and the racist rhetoric and the racist reality of Nazism was fresh in our minds, there was an attempt or a feeling or a general spirit to let's move away from that. But they didn't have to move away from that. They could still get Blacks to buy their products. They could still entertain many more millions of white people with the pejorative, with the negative images. So that the advertising agencies and the sponsors have never had to abandon that kind of rhetoric, that kind of racism. But we have seen that in the sense of the ratings, more millions prefer Blacks as stereotypes than the millions that like Blacks in more dramatic, serious presentations. And because I think of the predilection of ad agencies, which are white, producers, which are white, executives at the network, which are all white, because of these white predilections in television and its related industries, it's always been easy to say, hey, this show is not doing well, junk it, let's get rid of it. And that has been the chronic history of Blacks in television with relationship to the advertisers and the sponsors. Once the civil rights movement is going, the matter is complicated by the fact that the sponsor and its representative agencies don't want to offend the white sensibilities, particularly in the southern market where the civil rights is most keenly focused by the middle of the 1950s. They don't want to become associated with a black show. They don't want to be known as a black product. Now, what is ironic, or better better about all of this, is that the black consumer market represents by 1974-75 $70 billion. That's better than the gross national product of most countries of the world. There are more blacks in the United States than there are people in all of Canada. So there is a sizable, powerful market. But that never makes much difference because they can always say, well, the ratings don't show it. And the ad agencies can say, well, you know, there's just not a good buy.
If positive audience response and top ratings are the primary criteria for longevity in television, why did Roots, a milestone in television programming, not become a continuing series?
I think that Roots wasn't turned into a series because it wasn't what a lot of people thought it was. It was good television. It was wonderful. It was emotional. You had tears in your eyes when it was over, but it was exotic adventure. It fit into the category of one-shots. We love the blacks in these roles, but again, we don't want a serious diet of it. It made the racism so horrendous.
Roots was a bonanza for black actors, but the expectations of more work never materialized. A job in a soap opera is Brock Peters' first employment in 2 years.
I think that the footing we thought we'd gained in the past decade isn't as substantial as we'd hoped it would be. I was always fearful of that because it's one thing to have lots of roles handed out to actors in front of the camera. But my real concern, and the concern of most of us who are in this industry, is in the area of decision making. The kinds of roles that could be done, the kinds of projects that should be mounted, and the money to do that. We've not ever been in that position in any substantial degree. And so I'm not surprised that with backlash and changing sentiments that we have to fight harder now to maintain whatever ground we've gained. And it's not easy because we did not get a good solid footing. In front of the camera isn't finally where it's at. It's what that subject's going to be and who decides that it should be done.
After Roots and Roots 2, The Next Generation, you may know him as Tom Murray, Alex Haley's great-grandfather. He is George Stanford Brown, one of the few black directors in television and a former star of The Rookies. What do you see in your crystal ball in terms of future material for blacks? Is Roots going to bring us into a more dignified presentation of ourselves in TV and film?
I don't know, Tony. It's this way. The first part of Roots was the highest rated show in television history. It featured some of the best talent around in the entertainment industry, in actors and technicians. And after that, one would think, seeing that it made a great deal of money for the advertisers, I would suspect, that there would be a lot more of that programming around. And between the last Roots and this Roots, there just hasn't been that much. So when you say, what is this going to do for me or for the rest of the people in Roots, I really don't know. Because I don't think that the networks have been ready to do anything past Roots. I understand that they do have things in development now, but it remains to be seen exactly how far they take it.
Is there a possibility that this will be an ongoing series?
I don't see how, seeing that it is actual and factual, and it does cover a specific family and their history, and it goes all the way up to present, and I don't see where you can tag on anything to that. But I don't know. The networks have ways of doing all kinds of things.
I mean, like a Black Waltons, it seems like it would lend itself to that.
I don't know about Roots, but I'm sure that there could be so many other stories that could be done. Family could certainly be about a black family.
Well, if the networks made so much money with Roots, obviously the formula works.
Yes.
Well, why wouldn't somebody make a series out of it?
I don't know. I have no answer. Because I've seen the representation of black people on all the series television as diminishing over the past 3 years. It's just gone from a few people to not too many, except for the comedies. And, well, they need a lot of work.
Civil Rights Commission report cited an essay in Time magazine entitled Blacks on TV, A Disturbing Image, where Lance Morrow defines the characters in black situation comedies with razor-sharp sensitivity. George Jefferson, entrepreneur, black bigot, a splenetic little whip of a man who bullies like a demented overseer, seldom speaks below a shriek and worships at the church of ostentation. JJ on television's Good Times, a bug-eyed young comic of the ghetto with spasms of super cool blowing through his nervous system, a kind of electroglide strut. The NAACP leadership has gone even further in its condemnation of the misrepresentation and underrepresentation of black America in the television industry.
We are what we eat and what we see. If we're made to believe that we can only be clowns and buffoons and dope pushers and pimps and prostitutes or no good bums, many of us will grow up being that. And the tragedy of Hollywood has been they have perpetrated the type of image that is negative. We've got actors and actresses that can do anything. And the most amazing thing is that because of the NAACP and other organizations, we do not have black judges and black Congress people. We do have black mayors and police women and fire people. And I heard somebody in Hollywood say, well, there's not enough black roles. Anything you name, we could be. Anchor person on television network, you name it. But scientists, engineers, and they've forgotten that.
This is a part of the mentality, though. There are still people in this country who think that black people have a role, in quotes. And that's what the NAACP is very concerned about. Our role is to be Americans. And we have reached the point in our development where we have the competence and the capabilities in many fields. And it's distressing to me that despite this, we still see in our newspapers, in our television, in our movies, a tendency to give the impression that there are only white people who can articulate. There are only certain people who can do it. This is absurd. We ought to have writers, we ought to have our artists, we ought to have all these people making their contribution on a sustained basis in a community that understands this is a pluralistic society. And that's what we're working toward.
You know, it reminds me, one day I was watching a morning television show, and they were discussing the economy, you know, the double-digit inflation, very serious. And then they said something, I don't know how they said it, but they brought on a black man. And you know, obviously what he was going to do, sing a song. As if black folk couldn't deal with double-digit inflation or economics. And I thought how ridiculous it was, because what does that say to the little child? If you want to talk about economics, if you want to talk about inflation, if you want to talk about Federal Reserve banks, you go to the white folk. If you want to talk about singing and dancing and bucking winging, you turn to black people. Now that, to me, is almost deliberate, because I've seen it so much and so often that it can't be all accidental.
TV news is another example of the power and wealth of television. In news, however, the standard fare for building an audience is a casting of another kind.
One of the anecdotes I tell in the book is called the galvanic skin response test. That is, they wire these people up to this machine like a Keeler polygraph or lie detector to measure their sweat gland response. Then they flashed on pictures of the LA News team, right? And the people's palms sweat. Now, those who didn't make those viewers' palms sweat a great deal were fired. Over 20 people fired because they didn't have that kind of pizzazz to make people's palms sweat.
Bob Teague is a 20-year veteran of television journalism. He gives an insider's look at local TV news in his book, Live and Off-Color, Newsbiz. He charges that local news is 80% showbiz, and blacks are conspicuously absent from the golden ghetto of television executives.
The battle lines in TV news, I think, is not between blacks and white or between racist and non-racist, but between serious journalists and about people who care about numbers. That's where the battle line is primarily drawn. If a journalist, black or white, comes in with a good story that has some relevance, some pathos, some confrontation, some sex appeal or what have you, it gets on the air. So it's not a question of compromising on that level. You compromise your journalistic principles sometime for the sake of sensationalism and glitz and glamour, as opposed to covering stories that have real substance and meaning. That's where the compromises come in.
You then think that race is a minor factor in success in newsbiz?
Oh, I would say so, yes, because TV stations nowadays, not so much when I first came in, are more or less obliged these days to what they call balance their staffs ethnically and sexually. That is, a certain number of women, a certain number of blacks, Hispanics, etc. So that we don't have to worry about that anymore, I think, because of the FCC, the NAACP, and various pressure groups. People now have learned that they have got to represent their broadcast area with the people on that staff, and it helps their ratings, incidentally, by the way, too, to have these people on there. So we don't have to worry about so much getting in anymore. I think what we have to worry about now is getting into the corridors of power, because TV is not being attacked in the book on racist grounds, because I think that in many respects TV gives blacks a better break, is more egalitarian, I should say, than many other institutions in this country. We are talking about a basically racist society, and TV is one of the better institutions as far as I'm concerned. But when it comes to allowing minorities, blacks and Hispanics, for example, to get into the decision-making levels, that's where we still have trouble. That's the next step, I think.
There is a disproportionately low percentage of blacks in news executive positions, but statistics indicate that blacks are still grossly underrepresented in all aspects of broadcasting. For example, among television writers and directors, there are very few blacks, and since 1978, the number of black network news reporters has shown no major signs of growth. A recent network news report concluded that after more than a decade, blacks had made few dents into the upper echelons of TV news. None of the 19 senior producer executives in network news were black. Only 4% of the network's producers were black.
And what we've had in management here mostly over the years are white incompetence. I said, that's not just my opinion. That's the opinion of many white employees who have to deal with these supervisors here. White incompetency has been the rule rather than the exception. So I'm saying now we have a lot of black and Hispanic incompetence here. So why can't our incompetence work with your incompetence at that level? I must say they laughed, took it in the right spirit, and said, yes, you're right. There are times when you do have to gamble on employees, whether black, white, or otherwise.
People in your position don't write books like you wrote.
Well, it's true because people have been fired in television news for the most minor offenses. This is a pretty big offense to tell tales out of school, as it were. But I'm hoping that my motives are respected for what they are. I'm trying to help an industry become better. That is, we are getting away from real journalistic values for the sake of ratings, and that means more and more showbiz.
But Teague would be disappointed to find out the results of a recent survey. TV Guide commissioned a survey of Americans' attitudes about television news. It found that the majority of Americans, including blacks, were pleased with local news, and another third simply didn't care. Furthermore, 65% of blacks believed themselves unfairly treated, and a quarter of all Americans perceived ethnic or racial bias in television reporting. The not-so-subtle discrimination is even detectable in sports reporting. One study found that white athletes received more play-related praise, while black players were the targets of more negative references to their past achievements. In reality TV, the newscasts, blacks appear in only 1/4 of the shows and are usually seen but not heard. This study concluded that in world and national affairs, black viewpoints are rarely included, even though another study concluded blacks are more likely than whites to rely on television for political news and information.
What we're going to do at the television industry, first of all, is to sit down with those who run the creative end, who seem to be a little bit more amenable to listening, as I learned from the FCC, and insist that they do it. We have one or two other little tools that we plan to use. They're weaker than they were, and that has to do with the FCC. I plan to try to get the FCC to convene a hearing on exclusion of blacks from meaningful roles, just as we conducted a hearing for 3 days on children's television. And we took a license away from a station at my time because they excluded blacks. I would hate to call for a boycott because that partakes of censorship, and I have some problems, I must admit that. So there's some things we plan to do first. But we also have allies. We have some excellent white groups that are in communications that have helped bring the FCC and the industry as far as they have come, and we plan to join with them in trying to deal with it. But as a last resort, if we have to go the way of withdrawal of listenership, and we know how to do that, we wait for a Nielsen rating and the Arbitron sweep, and during that week, we won't be listening or looking.
More important, though, we can look at some of the advertising and talk to some of these corporate people about whom they support and why. So that I think between these, we ought to have some movement.
The NAACP and other groups have had more treaties with the movie industry than America had with Indians, and they've all been broken. And this is not a threat, this is simply a promise. I don't have any intention, Margaret doesn't have any intention of threatening anybody. We're not going to make promises we can't keep, but in the name of God and justice, we're not going to let people continue to trample on us as they have in the past.
I believe that if black people can change their image on television and in movies, black people can change their condition in America. After more than 3 decades of television and black involvement with the medium, our image still adds up to this. As sad as it is, as cruel as it is, Commercial television's situation comedies and its various facets treats our image with little dignity and sees little need to help us develop a better one. In my opinion, it is primarily the constant bombardment of our minds with modern-day toms, pickaninnies, fat mammies, and dim-witted coons as role models for our children and our minds that inflict the fatal paralysis of self-hatred. And this is how it's done. I do not wish to convey the impression that black comics should be eliminated. Instead, more roles for blacks should be added in other areas to give more balance to the picture. Anyway, blacks are basically just like whites. Most of us are average, we have a few geniuses, and a liberal sprinkling of fools. That's the balance we need in television. It boggles your mind today when you realize that the television industry once actually had a choice to present Afro-Americans as they really are, or to present them as they live in the imaginations of others. The image that my people have of themselves is the most germane issue in their existence. It's not a knowledge of how many cars or how much jewelry some so-called star owns, but a knowledge of who we are, where we've been, and where we're going that constitutes a practical wisdom of freedom. And that depends on us knowing what we are. Therefore, in this society, if it is not willing to give us that wisdom, then we'll have to get it ourselves, because we can't live in self-respect without it. Most media professionals will agree on one thing: viewers shape television. We'll have to write letters to the networks, local TV stations, and the advertisers, expressing an interest in an accurate depiction of us and thanking those who show the sensitivity to treat us accurately and fairly. We'll also have to write and produce more of ourselves, material for ourselves. Because we've been so beaten down psychologically, we sometimes lack faith in our own ability to change things. But it's that faith that's the key. My faith gives me the boldness to believe that God has not deserted us and never shall. My faith is also the basis for my logic, which tells me that if we can change our image on television and in movies, we can disturb the racial unbalance. We would then be reborn in the image of a proud people, a self-sufficient people, a people with a past who have made today's America and world possible. But first, blacks will have to realize that this is not what they're like. The Africans have a beautiful proverb that sums all of this up. It's not what you call me, it's what I answer to.